Okay, welcome back, folks. I'm going to ask you if you could to go to the committee's webpage and take a preview of we're talking about JRH 9 now. Take a preview of Pascal Chang's testimony. So we've heard from ASHA. This is on communication and how people who do not speak verbally communicate or have access to technology to assist them to communicate. We heard from the National Association around their, this resolution, just to remind you, is encouraging the National Association to reverse its stance on a particular type of therapy. The other thing that I learned, and they are not going to do that. That's pretty clear. They're not going to reverse their stance. But we could make, I guess one of my questions is whether or not we as a committee want to pass out a resolution that really is not going to have an impact, or we could be making an affirmative statement, such as what Pascal Chang is recommending. And he provides two links. And the ones that I'm going to ask you to take a look at, the first one is in the third paragraph of his testimony, where he says on the state website, he's talking about Dales. If you go to that website, the first thing is it takes you to the Dale website. The thing is the highlighted area on that website that says it's got the presumption of competence. Are we okay, Lauren?
This was flashing just now.
Oh,
We're still live on my phone, but.
He did this yesterday. Or day before.
Ambulance is coming
And this is going.
Here?
right now. Right.
I heard you say, are we okay, Lori?
okay, and that was the last.
We're still going? No.
Okay, all right. The presumption of competence, oftentimes people who cannot verbally speak because of a disability are presumed to not be competent in their thoughts or in their actions. And so what I would like to propose, and I didn't realize that we could do this. So with a resolution, we can make changes to it or totally revise it, just like we can a bill. So Michael Chernick is going to join us when Pascal is here, and he'll talk to us a little bit about that, about how we can do that. So what Pascal is going to be recommending, and I would like the committee to consider, is us really putting forth the notion that people have the right to have access to communication devices, access to assistance communicating, and this notion of presumption of competence. And so I would also ask you to look at the, come back to this. He further down in his testimony, he references the state of New York is proposing language. And I actually really like the language that they have, that they're proposing. I can't believe they still have laws that are called mental hygiene, but that's neither here nor there. But it's talks about, in order to ensure that each person with a disability is able to lead a life of dignity, all persons with a disability shall have the right to communicate in their preferred manner and utilize any communication supports that meet their needs, and staff and providers we don't stay under the section, ensure and acknowledge such rights. And that the state of Vermont, I would say here, the state of Vermont is ensuring and acknowledging those rights. So what I'd be proposing is to substitute language that talks about the as presumed competence that was on the Dale website, and some version of this language that is being proposed in New York State that just says people have the right to have to communicate in their preferred way. So keep that in the back of your head, because unless there's kind of like some, big objections to it, I feel like putting out a resolution that, was sent to us that we have already heard they're not going to change their mind about. It seems like it would be more fruitful for us to say people should have the, right to communicate and that we should support that right to communicate. Yeah.
I like that letter.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just also add to the conversation that I was feeling uneasy in recommending something where the medical organizations, the professionals in the organization have all been recommending against. And it would seem inconsistent for us where we are normally saying we should follow, often say we should follow experts like we did with immunization and the like,
Yeah.
to then be reversing sort of that
Right.
approach.
This enables us to support people's alternative and augmentative communication and their preferred choice without, going against the national organization that, I think that they also, that's the sort of certification body for speech and language pathologists. So if you folks are amenable to that, that's what we'll suggest, I think, after we hear from Pascal. It was very helpful to have this information from him. So that was that on that particular thing. So I also had an update in my noontime meetings on S-193. So judiciary is hoping to vote that out by Tuesday next week. There's going to be another version that appears on Tuesday. And it is going to be referred to corrections and institutions. And so we are probably going to make our recommendations to corrections and institutions, and work with them to get the language that we want to have included. The goal is to have that bill be voted out of corrections by Friday, because it still needs to go back to the Senate. The bill as it stands right now, and the way the language is coming out, would be to not have it be run by corrections, have it be under the AHS umbrella. It could be located on a correctional campus, a separate program to take advantage of the security that surrounds such a campus. But not run by corrections, and with separately contracted healthcare and professional providers. This is a substantial deviation from the Senate version. And so, I don't know exactly what will happen about that. And it requires the Agency of Human Services, or at least what's being proposed right now downstairs, is requires the Agency of Human Services to come back with, okay, we didn't agree with your plan, but we agree that there's a need, and give us, these are the parameters, and give us the cost estimates, give us your plan to implement this version. So that's the way it's looking like it's progressing through the committee downstairs. And I think that I represented our committee in saying that, we would be open to including in that recommendation that they give consideration to expanding Act 248 for people with dementia and people with brain injury, to be able to also have community safety as well as programming for those individuals. There just really isn't any way those folks should be in a correctional facility. It's not advisable for the facility, and it's not advisable for them. But I think that we appear to all be the policy committees, based on our information here, and the other three committees all appear to be in the same realm of agreement on it not being run by corrections, but it having a secure location, and having specific pathways for least restrictive environment. So we'll see what the language actually looks like, when it comes out of comes out of judiciary. And, we are going to work with Katie tomorrow afternoon. So I know we've been kind of the last couple of weeks, we've been buzzing off a little early. It probably, we'll probably be here, for a little while tomorrow afternoon, longer than we have been. So, because we need to kind of like, take advantage of when we can get Katie. She's been very busy downstairs, and, tomorrow afternoon we get her for a good chunk of time. And if we are, oh no, that's Jen. Next, on the next bill. So we have our witnesses coming at 2:30. So Laura, you can just kind of put us on pause for right now. Oh, no, we could have an update
Yeah, yeah.
on what happened downstairs in the Senate.
Okay, so today I spent printing in the Senate Health and Welfare. They voted out two of our bills, on full 5-0 votes, 660 and 657. They talked about, S-239, the working group, and because they hadn't warned the vote, they couldn't actually vote on it, but they talked about how they, had supported our work in the House and they plan to concur. So I'm not sure if that's tomorrow or if it will be Tuesday, but they'll be voting that out. 660 looks very different, so we'll have that, we'll have some conversations. 657, they just made two very minor changes, but otherwise kept it intact. They're two very minor changes, but it is a strike all just because of,
Where the changes happening.
of it being a very long bill.
The vote, the number?
5-0, everyone there, it was
Everybody.
unanimous.
So, thanks.
I have a copy of a spreadsheet I'll leave here on Ann's desk, but this is the spreadsheet on H660. They made a lot of changes on 660. They put $1.1 million in for the overdose prevention. I know that's not,
I was hoping to be able to vote on it.
well, I don't know what we're gonna do with this right now. I'll be honest with you. I think Senator Lyons knows that, there are some problems with this for us.
And she was talking about, she assumes it will be a committee of conference. She was like, when we're in the committee of conference, so, yeah.
When I talked to her on Tuesday, I said there were a couple of the things that I had heard reports on, that there were a couple of deal breakers for us on what she was doing. And they've also not included it here in 660, but they've taken money out of the opioid settlement for the hireability counselors. But they did that in the budget. That's another thing. We're not gonna have these two separate things. So I will need to be talking to Robin about that if we agree with that, but I don't think that we do, but, so we'll, just so you know, we're lining up testimony with the city of Burlington and the health department on the changes here and to get an update on the overdose prevention center. And they've inserted some language. It's contingency money. But I don't have any problem letting y'all know that I have a problem with putting any more money into development there. We're looking, if you're gonna operate, then, and you're still doing your process of working through it, it doesn't mean we're gonna give you more money. Right now, they have access to 2.2 million. They haven't spent 2.2 million, but they have access to 2.2 million. And I think one of the senators downstairs pointed out that, well, if we obligate this 1.1, we can't use it on anything else. It's obligated. And
what if they don't spend the money they've already?
right. What if, despite all their best efforts, they're able to locate it, well, there would be a reversion then, but. So if you want to see the specifics, it's on a spreadsheet right here, and I'm sure Nolan will update that for us as we move through. Other things to be aware is that, there's 800,000 in recovery centers that we did not approve of, but that they got in on the Senate version. And level 3.1, at 3.1, is that still called treatment or recovery?
3.1 or higher, that's treatment.
That's treatment, okay. So there's money in here about that, and they've split some of that out.
It did, yeah, it didn't add to the bottom line of the money. What the request was made was to just split it. This
Yeah.
goes on over here and the other part stays here.
Yeah, there's something at work there, which I suspect is why Gregory wanted to talk. I'm not sure. I think it has something to do with Jenna's promise, but I don't know exactly.
No, it was more towards, because I went back and reviewed where the testimony sent in by, Recovery Incorporated. So
Oh, yeah, it was
more-
Chad Vijay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Chad Vijay, yeah. So we'll see what happens about that. Looks like Pascal is joining us.
Perfect.
Good timing.
Good question.
Yeah,
Jubilee,
Yeah.
I don't know if you were down there or yesterday, it looks like they had, right after they were talking about the homelessness bill, they were talking about the recovery, S-157 recovery residence bill. I don't know if you were there for any of that yet. Were you
For
there?
yesterday? Yeah, no, I wasn't in there yesterday.
okay. Pascal, welcome.
Hi, must be at the State House.
Yeah, oh yes, that is where we are, Pascal. And I bet that you are not on Lake Champlain, but that looks like a beautiful picture of Lake
I'm
Champlain.
only about half a mile from it, and that's what it looked like earlier this week, but not today.
Well, it's a beautiful picture. So welcome. We're going to do introductions because it's sometimes difficult to see who's in the room. I want to make sure you know who all you're speaking with. Nice to see you again, Teresa Wood from Waterbury, and I also serve Bolton, Buellscore, and Honey.
Hi,
Oh, we
Dan.
just lost Pascal. Oh, no, he's still there.
Everybody.
We just can't see him. That's. Oh, he's talking. He was talking. Okay, just a minute, Pascal.
Okay,
We're still on. There he is. Okay. The funny camera moved around again. And that freaks me out. Weird. Okay, I guess we're back again. So, we remained being live, but we lost the picture.
Momentarily. So, okay, I introduced myself, Dan. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, I'm Dan Noyes. I represent Woolkit, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere.
Hi, good afternoon, Eric Bly, I represent Rutland City.
Brenda Steady, East Milton, Westford.
Hello, Doug Bishop, and I'm one of Colchester's representatives.
Hello, I'm Zahn Eastis. I live in Guilford and I also represent Vernon.
Hi there, I'm Esme Cole and I represent Hartford.
I didn't catch your name again.
Esme.
Esme, okay, great.
Hi, I'm Jubilee McGill, and I represent Bridport, Middlebury, New Haven, and Weybridge.
Hi, I'm Ray Garofano. I live in Essex and I also represent Essex Junction.
Lori over here in the corner.
Trying to deal with the technology.
Nice to
Thank you
meet you
for
all.
Thank you for being here, Pascal, and thank you for reviewing the resolution, and you're going to tell us a little bit about your experience, and we have taken a look at your written testimony, and we are just being joined by Michael Chernick, who's legislative counsel and who drafted the resolution. So the floor is yours, and thank you for being here this afternoon.
So where would you like me to start?
If you wouldn't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and your what you have been doing for the last many years, as well as a little bit about the Vermont Communication Task Force.
Okay. Yeah, so I am, I've been working in the field, God, at least over 40 years, more than that actually. But I started working at the Brandon Training School. That's how I got into the field. And then I went to UVM and got a master's in special education. So I was a special education teacher for several years in the southern part of the state, and then moved to the Burlington area and began working at the Howard Center, where I worked for 40 something years. And I had different jobs there over the years, but in the early 90s, I became interested in communication, and that became my role at the Howard Center. I developed a communication services program there that it's probably most of, in many of our agencies, there are many people that have communication challenges. And so there's a lot of need there. And at the Howard Center, we began to see that we needed, as an agency, needed to sort of build our capacity and have staff that could actually work directly on those needs. And over those years, I developed experience and expertise with one of they're referred to as the assisted methods. That's a term that now being used, facilitated communication, the RPM, the rapid prompting method, which your initial resolution was that's another one, and then spelling to communicate. So I've had lots of years of experience with that, worked with many different people in both, different ages and different places. And right now I retired from the Howard Center a year and a half ago, but I'm still doing consulting and training. So I still work with people at the Howard Center and also different people from other agencies in the state. And I've been around the controversy around these quote unquote assisted methods. It's been going on for many years. But one of the things, I think the letter that was developed by the Vermont Communication Task Force was we're trying to really look at, there's been a lot of resistance or lack of acceptance for people having access to these methods. And I think the whatever movement around supporting them has moved to a place of, it's a communication rights issue, that people need to have access to the method of communication that they feel works best for them, and that the team around them does. To back up, the Vermont Communication Task Force, it began in 2000, and the idea behind it is it's a representative group of people from around the state, and most of the developmental service agencies have a representative on this task force. We also have speech language pathologists, someone from Department of Aging and Independent Living, and then we also have some ad hoc members. But the idea was, by having this task force, we could kind of, as a group, work on system-wide issues that relate to communication. So our mission has been to improve supports and services for people around the state around communication. And one of the things we've been involved in more in the last 10 years is advising on different policies that relate to communication. So, just as an example, there's a new assessment tool that was developed to identify what people's needs for services were. And initially, communication was not there was not a section that was focused on that. We felt that was really important, and advised that there should be a section included in that. And then we've also developed guidelines and around use of facilitated communication, for example, but we also have developed guidelines for how agencies how they document a person's communication needs. So we've tried to work on a statewide basis, and a lot of it is sort of beginning to change the system to better meet the needs of people who have communication challenges.
Thank you. So one of the things that you shared, and thank you for pointing out that this is what is on our website, is from the Communication Task Force. So did the task force, did you have members meet, and did they review JRH 9? Did you all review?
We have a subgroup, a smaller, so a a subgroup of people that actually work on some of the nitty-gritty things of policy development and guidelines. The greater network is they're representatives from agencies, but they sort of change a lot because there's, people change their jobs or they leave their agencies. And so we're kind of a core group. So we all reviewed the resolution. So it's a group of like 6 or 7 people.
And so what I see that what the group is recommending is that instead of focusing on a single communication method, and ASHA's resistance to it, that modifying the resolution so it's focused on the right of, every person to access communication assistance in their preferred method of communication. And I really appreciate the connections to the statement on the Dale website that talks about the presumption of competence, as well as the draft language that's under consideration in New York State. Essentially confirming and stating that it's a right of all individuals to be able to communicate in their chosen method and form of communication. And that communication, in fact, helps people to lead full and inclusive lives. So that's, I think, really important. So what I'm hearing you say is that rather on behalf of the task force through this written statement is that it'd be preferable to speak to that right to communicate as opposed to sort of calling out one particular communication method and the national organization's resistance to it.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
And just because I think one of the things where the statement from Dale came about because there was resistance to the use of facilitated communication. And so what we realized was that this is a bigger issue than just that method, is that idea of people have the right to have access to communication, and they have the right to choose what method they want to use. And I think in general, that right to choose is for lots of things in people's lives. That's, that whole idea of person-centeredness and people having, the rights and control over things in their life. So.
Great. Are there questions from other committee members? I think you've been really clear, and the document you provided was really clear, and I think will definitely influence our actions. So hopefully you can bring that back to your colleagues on the task force and express our appreciation for the information and sort of the refocus on the right to have access to communication in the method and manner in which people choose. I think that's a good refocusing of this. Thank you for being here today, Pascal. It's nice to see you.
Well, great. Thank you all.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay,
Take care.
bye.
Ledge Council, would you like to join us at the table? There is a chair.
One of our Vermont ties, actually.
I see.
Oh, nice.
Michael Chernick, Legislative Counsel. I will first make just a couple of broad comments. I had really no idea this was being taken up at all until Representative Wood spoke to me. And that you may, if you decide to proceed, and of course, that's entirely your call, of course, you might want to consider the potential of doing this as a House only for the procedural reason only that we're now at April 30. And I'm assuming the committee, if it decides to move forward, wants something that's going to get through the legislative process. And given where we are on the date, it could be stranded in a Senate committee. If all of you decide to move forward, and even if it passes the House, there's no guarantee what may or may not happen in the Senate. Again, that's your call, but I just leave that as an option you may want to consider if you're more focused on making a legislative statement on the topic and making sure it becomes an official statement versus it being a in-process piece of legislation in one house that just dies due to the minimum amount of time at the end of the session. That's your call, but I just raised it.
Okay. And so, so it was actually news to me until we had the conversation a little while ago, that we could actually modify it.
Do
And
whatever you want with it.
right, so is it, so you said a House resolution, does that mean we have to go through the process of, no, because it wouldn't be sponsored, because then at that point, is it sponsored by us?
That would be the option, is it could be a committee, it could be if we're going to switch it from a JRH to an HR, if that were to happen, I think what would happen then it would become, probably, I would double check with Betsy Ann, but I believe it would become a committee resolution at that point, as opposed to a report. You could also just do a strike-all, you could amend it and just let it go, stay as a joint, and hope that your colleagues in the other chamber decide to take it up before the end of session. That's your call completely.
Okay,
I think, and I'll double check with Betsy Ann, that if you were to switch it from a joint to a one house only, it probably would need to come out as a new resolution of the committee, and I can get a confirmation on that, but I
Okay.
think that to be the case.
okay, thank you. So I think we had some conversation prior to Pascal joining us. But I think that what we would like to do is to essentially, for the moment, we'll just keep it as a strike all, so to strike the content of it.
Yeah.
And to then reference, and you can see it on our website, Pascal's, it's under Pascal Chang's name. He provides a link to the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living website. And there's a statement on that website that is referencing the presumption of competence for people. So we would like to sort of like fit that into legislative language.
To assume that the individuals are competent.
Yes.
Regardless of any diagnosis, regardless of any diagnosis.
Right, regardless of ability to communicate verbally. That's what the resolution does. So it essentially says that it's important to note that difficulties with communication not be taken as evidence of intellectual competence. And it goes on, it's just a couple of sentences.
Fine, I mean, I can just take it from the website and.
So, yeah, and you might need
Whereas
to
clauses.
right, you might need to modify.
Modify it just so it fits into our format, but selectively leaving it alone.
And then the second piece, later in that document,
Yeah.
he references the state of New York's pending legislation, and we like the language on that as
Is that a
well.
res or a bill in New York?
In New York, it is a bill.
So
It's
I
a draft
probably want to
bill.
look at the finding, because you're looking at a resolution here, not a bill.
Correct, yeah, no, it's just, we like.
Maybe there are findings in it that I can pull.
Well, it essentially is saying in order to ensure that each person with a disability is able to lead a life of dignity, all persons with a disability shall have the right to communicate in their preferred manner and utilize any communication supports that meets their
In other
needs.
words, turn that into a whereas clause.
Right, a whereas clause, yeah.
I'm curious, what the language in there, it talks shall have the right to communicate. If some of what JRH 9 was trying to do was to include in an educational setting the methods that OSHA does not approve of, if we're referring to it as a right, would schools be required?
This says this is not a law, it's a resolution.
Well, I guess I understand that. I guess my question is, even in resolution, that word carries no,
It's a statement
Legal weight.
of our beliefs.
But as I'm writing, and I ask a question, my understanding from listening to the conversation in the last 10, 15 minutes is what you're looking for is the ability to communicate, not endorsing a particular method per se.
Correct.
Should I be mentioning that this is not endorsing any one particular method?
I think what we're saying is that we don't want to endorse, but we don't want to exclude. So I think we would just say silent on that, saying right to communicate through any alternative or augmentative communication method.
Pascal provide a link to the New York or? is
Yes,
that-
he did.
Okay.
Yes, it's in that.
Very brief.
Yeah, if you go to his document on our website, you'll see the links.
Both the New York link and the
And the
Dale
Dale.
link.
Yes, they're both there. So we're essentially wanting to say that people have a right to communicate, they have a right to receive assistance to do that. And we should presume that a person's competence is not,
That would be right at the top.
yeah, it's right, at the top, that we should presume competency of individuals. It is actually quite amazing. I have seen more than two handfuls, people who have, they've been unlocked. Their ability to communicate has been unlocked by some of these methods. So, yes, we do not want to endorse any particular method. And we do not want to, we're not going to mention the National ASHA, which is, that's the purpose of this, the way it's written right now, is encouraging the National Association of Speech and Hearing something or other.
Yeah.
To reverse their statement. And it's clear that they're not going to reverse their statement. And so we prefer to make an affirmative statement about people's ability and right to communicate.
The reason it's written the way it is goes back even before I started working on this particular portfolio, because it had been, we had explained, our office had explained to the sponsor that the challenges for a state mandate on this particular topic were that in order for a state to mandate to require in the first place, it would have to be a system that had professional acceptance. And without that professional acceptance, it was highly unlikely that any state would endorse a particular system.
Right. And that's
Any state, not just Vermont.
that's where we fell down on this as well. You know, we said, even though we've seen people in our own committee, exhibit their right to communicate using a method that is not endorsed by ASHA. We do, and we respect their right to say that, but we also respect the individual's right to use that form of communication that fits their needs. So I think where we've come down on this is just to make sure that we're making an affirmative statement.
So I then have a couple of drafting questions, if I may.
Yeah.
Number one is, what's my timeline?
Well, yeah, probably not what I would want. But so we can move it to next week. I was hoping to vote this out tomorrow, but
Want to vote it out
I
tomorrow?
would like to vote it out tomorrow.
Okay, if we do it for tomorrow, if we can discuss this for a moment, the nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
It's going to need to be relatively short, maybe no more than 4 or 5 whereas clauses, a page and a half tops. We're not speaking here about a 3 or 4 page resolution.
No, we are not.
Page 1.5 at the outside.
Yeah. Free.
Number 2 is that I will be basically relying on those 2 links.
Yes.
They're going to be my source. Number 3 is I would appreciate a decision whether I'm changing this into a HR as a new resolution or whether I'm just doing a strikeout amendment. That's your call completely, but I'd like direction on that so I know what I'm doing tonight, so you don't waste another legislative day afterwards.
I appreciate that. What are folks thinking about that? Are you thinking we should just do it a House resolution?
I think so, just because timing and not knowing what the Senate's gonna do, trying to negotiate with the Senate to ensure.
I also want to respect Representative Burt's, attempt to have this and move it to the floor. So I guess we'll go with House resolution. Yep.
Okay, which means I said that as a new request, but that's not a problem.
Okay.
I think at that point, I'm putting it in the name of the committee, is my understanding.
Yes, you can put it on the House Human Services Committee. Yeah. And on the floor report, I'll give the floor report and I will reference.
What will happen is if you vote it out tomorrow, then we need to formally get it introduced on Tuesday. And as it's a committee resolution. It obviously would not come back to committee. It would just go on, it's at the discretion of the speaker, whether it gets, how it's treated, but it would probably go on notice for the next, it would go on the notice calendar for the next legislative day with the possibility of a rule suspension for taking it off. But in terms of those mechanics, Madam Chair, my recommendation would be that you speak directly with the speaker.
Yes. Well, she referred it to our committee and I will make sure she understands what
What you're
is
doing.
happening with it. Yeah.
So if you want to set a time for me tomorrow, so I have an understanding of what I'm doing in terms of time.
Yes. Lori, help me out with that. We have it for, it'll be, I don't know how
We
long
don't
those
vote.
people are gonna
We
take,
don't
but
have it on anywhere.
no, but we will.
Can,
Yeah.
you want to do it like after, you know.
Yeah, it'll be like,
Maybe until 2:30.
okay, so it'll be let's use Katie as much as we can, so it'll be like 2:30. And that'll give you a little more.
Okay.
With the understanding this is going to be relatively short.
Exactly.
Or very.
You can,
There'll be a few clauses, but I'm thinking about a page.
yeah, and just send it, if you need any input, just use me.
Yeah, and my other query is to whom is, I'm obviously going to have a different recipient, I imagine, than here. I think I was,
What we're gonna say is the Vermont Communication Task Force.
Okay.
And we
do
can.
you have an address for it or?
I do not. We can send it in care of Dale, the Department of Disabilities, Aging and
Is
Independence.
the Communications Task Force an element of Dale?
Looking it up.
Well, I guess I wouldn't call it an element of Dale per se. They're on the, Dale facilitates it. That's what I would
So
say.
what I'm going to do is to the Vermont Communications Task Force in the text, but in terms of my form, I'm going to say that it's going to be mailed to Dale, to the task force in care of Dale.
Right, and if I forgot, I don't have the language right in front of me. Who is the beneficiary? That was going to ASHA? Is that who it was going to?
I think it was going to a constituent.
All right, so
Hold on. Yeah, if you give me just a second, maybe it's a while since I wrote this. Yeah, to ASHA, yeah. Geez.
okay, we can send it to ASHA if we want. ASHA, the Vermont Communication Task Force, and I want to send it to AOE. That's because I want education people to be informed about it.
So in other words, I'm going to keep ASHA and I'll make that the third and AOE is the second and the Communications Task Force will be first. And knowing that on that first one, it means mailing it to
I'm
Dale.
gonna go with Zon's recommendation, take out ASHA.
You got ASHA? Okay. So we're going
They don't
to,
really care
They
what-
don't care.
right, so what we're doing here is the Communications Task Force being mailed to the Dale Commission. For the purposes of my mailing,
Yes.
being mailed to the Dale Commissioner's office
Yes,
and to AOE.
and AOE, the,
Right, yeah, Agency of Education.
yeah.
I'm gonna piggyback off,
Doug?
Doug. I wanted to say Norm. Yeah. I was like, I know it's, because I was on the school board so long and special ed is requested by parents that they want this and that and the school to pay for it. So the school will not be obligated if a parent reads this resolution and says, I want the school to get one of those for my child. There's no obligation.
What this resolution represents
Yes.
would be to encourage, to support, but a resolution cannot bind anything other than your internal legislative operations
Okay.
and a really that's full disclosure, a really limited category of land transfer sales from the Department of Forest Parks and Recreations for which there is a statutory provision. Beyond that, it can merely encourage, urge, not bind.
Not bind.
Not bind. It's an expression of political sentiment.
It's just budgets are so tight and.
Yeah, no, it's not binding anything. If this were a bill, that could be very different.
Okay.
But this is not a bill, it's a
And I know
resolution.
he already asked, but I just
No,
wanted to.
it's a resolution. It can only express your opinion as a legislature or as a house. It doesn't direct anyone to do anything, with the exception of mailing the copies. That it does direct.
That's it.
Yes, but
Okay.
beyond that, yeah.
So parents would have to buy it if they want it.
Yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
Thank you very much, Michael. We appreciate that very much and appreciate your ability to, we're trying to clean up things that are on our inbox over there and this will help. So thank you very much.
If I may, Madam Chair, for just a moment on a different topic, before I came over, I'm very close to sending you a rough draft on the other matter that the committee's aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you all 2:30 tomorrow afternoon.
All righty, thank you so much. Excuse me. Okay. We have the, oh, they're just coming on. Everybody's on. Everybody's on. All right. Yeah. I don't have their names. Hold on a second. I want to make sure I pull up the right people. Okay. All right, committee, this afternoon, we are, gonna hear, we are going to hear first from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, on S-193, and then we are going to be hearing from Kelly Carroll, who is, affiliated with the Voices for Vermont Victims. Welcome, Mia, and Melody and Amanda. Thank you for being here. We appreciated you reaching out and asking to testify on this bill. We've taken quite a bit of testimony on this, and we are sort of nearing the stages of needing to make some decisions. So we appreciate you reaching out the way you did. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Chair Wood. And good afternoon, everybody. We appreciate this opportunity. We did submit some written testimony. Did everybody get that?
I'm just refreshing to see if it, not quite yet, right? Not yet.
Okay. So what we were gonna, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hold on just a second. Hold on just a
Okay.
second. It might be on yesterday's day. Just double checking. No. So we don't seem to have it right in front of us, but we
Okay.
will.
All right.
So why don't you just get started?
Sure. We just want to, first of all, the three of us serve, as you said, as commissioners for the Vermont Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And we will each introduce ourselves in our respective parts concerning this legislation. And we submitted that written testimony. And we just want to use our time today to briefly explain how we arrived at our concerns and why we decided to submit this in the first place. We're simply asking lawmakers to reconsider placing this response under the Department of Corrections and instead to consider a structure better equipped to center treatment, humanity, dignity, and accountability, especially in light of Vermont's history of eugenics and institutional harm, since that's our focus in our commission. My name is Mia Schultz, and I come to this testimony grounded in lived experience and in the testimonies that we have received from people who have survived and continue to survive mental health crises, and from people who have lived inside carceral systems. Those voices have been clear. When people are in distress, too many systems still respond by managing, containing, and controlling them instead of caring for them. And our concern is not whether the state should respond when someone is in crisis, including in the hardest case where violence has occurred and harm has been caused. We know that once violence sort of enters the conversation and the picture, it becomes much easier for the person who's in crisis to be reduced to the harm that they cause, and much harder for the state to remain grounded in care, in dignity, and in accountability. So our concern is what kind of system Vermont is choosing to build and whether that system is actually capable of providing the kind of care that it promises. And that matters here because this bill is built around mental health evaluations, around treatment, around stabilization, restoration, and ongoing review. And if truly that's the goal, then lawmakers have to ask whether a corrections-led structure is actually equipped to deliver that kind of care in a meaningful and sustained way. Across our work, we have heard from people living with mental health crises, psychiatric disability, and the impact of institutional and carceral systems. And what we hear again and again is that when people are in distress, that they need care and stability and trust and support. And too often they're met instead with fear, force, isolation, and control. And they're treated as risks to manage rather than human beings that are in need of care. They describe not being listened to, not being understood, and being pushed deeper into systems that leave them with less dignity and less autonomy than when they entered. And that matters because a process can look clinically appropriate on paper and still be experienced as coercive, punitive, and harmful in practice. A core concern in the continuity of care is pretty personal for myself. I have a nephew in the carceral system right now with grave medical needs who requires treatment to stay alive. We've been told that there has not been enough capacity to advocate for the medical supports that could actually keep him alive. So I just ask you all, if the system already struggles to meet basic life-sustaining medical needs, how can we trust it to carry out something so comprehensive as mental health evaluation, treatment, planning, restoration, and true continuity of care? And so that's why placing this response under the Department of Corrections raises so much serious concern for us, because corrections is not a neutral structure. It's built around custody, surveillance, compliance, and control. And even when people inside that system try to act with care, the larger framework still shapes how behavior is interpreted, how risk is judged, and how non-compliance is defined. And so for people with mental disabilities, that can mean their distress, their fear, or difference is read through a punitive lens instead of a supportive one. I also wanted to skip through and talk about our concern for bias and decisions about dangerousness, restoration, readiness for release, and return to confinement. They're all human systems, and human systems carry racial bias, disability bias, class bias, and so on and so forth, bias against trauma. And so for people with psychiatric disabilities, intellectual disabilities, communication barriers, or limited resources, those judgments can be especially dangerous. So when someone is already in crisis and already overwhelmed, already misunderstood, how do we incorporate sort of accountability measurements? It has to be built in from the beginning, and that means oversight that's meaningful outside of the department that it lays in. It means being transparent to the public, reporting, and that includes who's being confined, for how long, under what conditions, and what outcomes. It means disaggregated data that can reveal disparities. And it means meaningful involvement from impacted communities, including people who know firsthand about the harms of coercive and institutional systems. They're not extra features, they're just part of what fairness requires. So our simple ask is just reconsider placing this under the Department of Corrections, choose a structure that's actually equipped to center care, dignity, humanity, and continuity from the beginning. And also, if the state does decide to move forward with a secure model, then independent oversight must be strong, accountability has to be strong, and safeguards against bias must be part of the design and not added later. I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, Melody Mackin, who will speak to the history that informs this moment as well.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you. So hi, my name's Melody, and I'm Commissioner Melody Mackin. And I'm just going to bring attention to the historical treatment of folks that have been deemed a danger to society, that were isolated from community through punitive institutions. So the VTRC, as you know, we were created as a result of an apology for sterilization and institutionalization in order to separate certain people from society. I will say there's a slippery slope to dehumanization, and historically speaking, it's been consistent with a lot of our systems. And now we're working to make them better. So I just want to provide a solid example of just a few. I'll be quick, and I just want to set the stage for this. So I have a few examples of women that were taken into custody within the juvenile detention system at the Week School in the 1960s and 70s. And there was a process by which folks went into isolation, how they performed intake, and then how they used this as a punitive measure to put people in isolation. And their program was supported by mental health professionals and other care providers. So this is the first entry, the first log entry. This is, I'm going to read two examples, but it's the same inmate. So this girl is becoming increasingly upset. The more she is locked up, the less control she is able to maintain under the current, and they put it parentheses, program. She clearly is a treatment failure. She unconsciously feels unloved and unwanted, and every time she's locked up, and especially by her cottage parent, the negative cycle is reinforced. She mentioned to me that the only thing they know how to do with me is lock me up, and such obviously is true. Her underlying self-destructiveness will be more demonstrable within 24 hours of solitary. And then again, this is another day that she was in solitary, another time. She has sustained chronic physical parental abuse from parents and step-parents since an infant. She was hospitalized at 2 following a beating, and is unfortunate indeed that she is in a corrections milieu where she obtains identity on an unconscious level by authority confrontation with negative surrogate parents, which essentially constitutes her childhood learning shaping experience regarding adults. She simply does not fit or mesh with the strengths of the Week School on a need level, while simultaneously seeks and has obtained massive confrontation and abuse on another less conscious level from staff interaction. She obviously is on a negative spiral, which will not be interrupted in this institution. Her needs are deeply seated and require significant amounts of individual attention not available at Weeks. So this detention system dealt with behaviors they saw as destructive rather than treating her for the root cause and the mental health needs that she had. And you can sort of see how locking her up in this system, which was not equipped for a continuum of care, only added to harm, and then led her to a path where solitary and incarceration were her only courses of action. And then on another level, so this is the next student that I would like to mention. So she ought to be transferred to the Lund home directly rather than waiting and running ad infinitum. They have a therapy program as well as therapeutic milieu and could deal with her anxiety avoidance tendencies other than through solitary confinement, which hardly constitutes humane and or effective treatment of a pregnant and emotionally troubled young girl. This is 1973. And you can sort of see, like, this student, she is becoming a mother, and they're talking about how they're treating her through solitary confinement rather than all of the needs that she has, both, mental health wise and her physical being. And then this is the last one I have. So log entry 3. She is far more institutionalized than a month ago. She's internalized her hurts and fears while defying the institution's status quo as an avoidance device. The larger the staff response to her inappropriate behavior, e.g. lockup, the more she'll carve and tattoo upon herself in an erotic fulfillment of defiance toward parental substitutes, concomitant with self-hate, self-destructiveness, and the child who feels unwanted. Actually, isolation is the perfect reinforcer of the entire syndrome. And so while these examples are within the juvenile system, these are people who are at the cusp of adulthood, and in one case was about to become a mother. So now imagine adults with these same issues and have persisted for years beyond their childhood, and the difficulty of managing such mental health needs within this same type of system. It's only worse, right? And so this is very early on within the isolation logs, and it is riddled with this type of reinforcement that a punitive system combined with the lack of appropriate treatment is very harmful and discriminatory. So how do you treat the whole human being with trauma-informed care and mental health supports? Is the Department of Corrections really equipped with this capability? Because this program had professionals, had psychiatrists, had all these mental health professionals that were working with them. And it was very clear in the logs, this is inhumane treatment. This is not good. You should not be doing this. And in one case, they actually had to, they had what they call the hyperkinetic child, and they kept putting her in solitary where she couldn't move. And she was, there was some who were hallucinating. They actually had to sedate them just to make them okay. So now, if you continue this, right, while we hold all these, we're holding these Vermonters in our care. So regardless of what people have done, they're humans. What's the best system to do this within? And the carceral system is not the appropriate location to deal with mental health issues needed for rehabilitation in this way. So thank you. And I'm going to pass this on to Amanda Garces.
Thank you, Commissioner McKinney and Schultz. Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Garces, Commissioner for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I am gonna just, would like to focus on what happens after the crisis and how do we bring people back into our community in a way that supports healing. Too often, people with mental health are moved through fragmented systems, handed off from agency to agency. And breaking that trust. So we want to talk about, what we are recommending. So for example, someone may be stabilizing crisis settings, but when they return, that support doesn't follow them. They are expected to connect with providers, retell their story, rebuild them trust from scratch. That gap in care can undo the very progress we're trying to make. The chief medical officer at the Howard Center testified today in judiciary about the models in other states that do work, such as the Connecticut Yale model. And this isn't just another set of facilities, it is a commitment to medical ethics over purely legal outcomes. It uses community forensic treatment teams that don't wait for a patient to connect with them. They say that the person across settings so we have this especially opportunity in Vermont to really think about what is working. So if the goal here is to fill a real gap in the system, we must really be honest about how we feel it. We cannot respond to a failure in one system by placing people into another system that was never designed to care for them. If we do that, we risk recreating the same harm, just in a different form. I think a true continuum of care is only as strong as the continuing of care within. It means coordinated team-based support that stays with one person across settings and over time. This is especially important as they return to the community. From an organizer perspective, we know this cannot rest in one provider or one agency alone. It takes a connected system, holistic clinical teams, community support, and relationships that are accountable to each other and to the person giving care. because care does not end at discharge. It continues where people actually live their lives, providing stability, connection, and real support. And because of that relatively small number of people we're talking about in this is an opportunity for Vermont. We can look honestly at our past, as Commissioner Mackin shared, respond to what is happening right now, which Commissioner Schultz shared, and choose to build something different for the future, something grounded in humanity, dignity, and care. We have a chance to create something we can be proud of, something that helps people heal, community all as a whole, not just one person, and something that reflects who we say we are. So I thank you for your time, and we're open for questions. Unless the commissioners want to add something that we forgot.
Thank you all three for your perspective and the specific examples that you gave around how it makes a difference what system a person engages with. Questions from committee members for the witnesses. You definitely bring a perspective that we have not heard from, have not heard in this way. And I think that's really important, and I think speaks to the value of the commission and, your role there as members of that commission. So we do have a question. Go ahead, Representative Cole.
Thank you. Trying to think about the best way to articulate this, but I think, knowing that the backdrop of this bill as proposed was, public safety, community safety, and, in part on behalf of victims who experience harms caused. And so I wonder if you could speak more to how your recommendations, elevate those concerns as well.
Sure. I mean, I don't think that there has to be an either or scenario where we keep the public safe and we also treat people like humans. And I think that public safety, obviously, it matters. Victims matter. Community safety matters. The gravity of harm does not remove the state's responsibility to build the right kind of system. In fact, the hardest cases raise the stakes of getting that structure right. The question's not whether the state responds. The question is whether the response is rooted in treatment and dignity, and whether it expands carceral control under more clinical language. That's my point of view, is that we have to hold both, and we have this great opportunity, as Commissioner Garces mentioned, to hold both where dignity for all is included. And that doesn't mean carceral. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it's very helpful. I think you highlighted something that we tend to think of often is like the confluence of like it's an either or. I appreciate how you put that. It's like either we're protecting the public by putting them in jail, or we're keeping them in the community and therefore we're not able to protect the public. And so I think really digging into the reality of that kind of assumption is really important and powerful.
Thank you. Other questions for the commissioners? Thank all three of you for being here this afternoon, and thank you for your feedback and input and giving us a different perspective. That's very helpful.
Thank
right.
you. I
Thank you.
appreciate everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So we're just having a little momentary. We think our next witness is here, but we're double checking. Thank you. So
Timing's important.
so we can, I'm just gonna, if,
I'll let her.
and then we'll see, we're gonna take a chance. Well, we're not doing anything, so we can see.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you.
Zoom land. No, I think that that's the last name. Part of it, maybe. Kelly?
Are you able to hear me okay?
We can. You just froze for a minute, but I think that we can. So thank you so much for being here this afternoon, especially accommodating our schedule. As we get close to the end of the year, we don't have a lot of flexibility in our schedule, so we try to fit people in who want to testify whenever we can get them in. So I really appreciate your ability to be flexible and be here this afternoon. So welcome. This is the House Human Services Committee. You haven't testified in our committee before, so we're going to do a round of introductions so you know to whom you're speaking. My name is Teresa Wood, and I am from Waterbury, and I also serve Bolton, Buellscore, and Huntington.
I am Ray Garofano. I live in Essex and I also serve Essex Junction.
Hey, I'm Jubilee McGill. I live in Bridgeport and I also serve Middlebury, New Haven, and Weybridge.
Hi there, I'm Esme Cole and I represent Hartford.
Hi there. My name is Zahn Eastis. I live in Guilford. I also represent Vernon.
Hello, Kelly. We've exchanged some emails. Doug Bishop of Colchester.
Brenda Steady, I live in Milton, but I represent East Milton in Westford.
Hi, good afternoon, Eric McGuire, Rutland City.
Good afternoon, I'm Dan Noyes. I represent Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere.
Amy Johnson, Vermont Care Partners. And I'm Lori over here in the corner. We've been emailing assistance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours. We're happy to have you here this afternoon.
Thank you very much. And first of all, my name is Kelly Carroll. I'm a resident of Bennington, Vermont. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak and for taking up this very complex bill. And for those of you who have been around a while, I'm sure it seems like deja vu because this has been coming up in the 5.5 years I've been involved with it. I think this is the third time, maybe fourth. But like I said, I'm a resident of Bennington. I have a degree in nutrition. I have 40 years experience working in healthcare, and some of that in behavioral health and developmental services. 5.5 years ago, my daughter, Emily Hammond, was murdered by somebody who had been deemed not competent, which is a legal determination by the court. And I am here in support of S-193. And I will be direct because I believe that this bill addresses a gap that Vermont has known about for years. It's a gap for a very small, high-risk population, but these individuals are charged with very violent offenses. And some of them were found not competent to stand trial. Some of them are just stuck in the system now. There's one person who's been in the system for over 30 years. There's another one who went to court this morning. I don't know how it turned out, but she's been in the system for 6 years. And in our case, it's going on 6 years. And I think, I know that your committee concentrates mostly on disabilities, but I think given the increase, unfortunately, in SUD cases and that issue in Vermont, there are more of these cases that are just intertwined. It's not clear cut whether is it a mental health issue? Is it a disability? Is it substance use? Is it something else? And that substance use may be a little bit different than like a traumatic brain injury or dementia, right? But right now we don't have any way to manage any of those cases. And what we have just brings about delay, cycle, and in much of the testimony that you've heard, without structure, without supervision, and without a full continuum of care. And I've been trying to follow all of the testimony and all of in all of the committees. And yesterday I heard a comment that there will be other cases, unfortunately, and I agree. Emily's murder was preventable. He was out in the community, he had been released, and I don't know if accountability or if oversight is better, but that was missing. And one thing that I learned by listening to testimony over these last 5 years, whether it's been in healthcare committee, or in human services, is that, you know, evaluations are really tough for people to do. And we really have to work with prevention and treatment in mind. And I can understand that, because when we were told that Emily had been murdered, we were told at the very, very same time that her killer would be, not ever go to prison, that he would just be in a secure hospital for the rest of his life. But that turned out not to be true. You know, we believed it, and we thought, you know, we can't do anything to bring Emily back, but he's already said that he can get away with this. The state of Vermont can't do anything. There's a video the state's attorney's office can show you if you want to see it. And I think it just shows how the system, without having that oversight part, really has a way to escalate. One thing that I consistently heard from people in agencies was that if somebody who had conditions, like there was a violent incident and they were out in the community with conditions, if they violated those conditions, the people in the agencies were not comfortable reporting it. They felt that it would break the trust with the client. I can get that. I know that that has to be. So there really has to be somebody else kind of providing that oversight. In our case, had there been something in place like P&P, probation and parole, to just make sure that they were following, you know, his conditions. He was going to his appointments. He wasn't reusing crack. There could have been an intervention. And had that been in place, you and I would not be talking now. And he wouldn't be sitting in jail. And he has been sitting in jail for 3 years for refusing to take a competency evaluation with no treatment at all. And I say that because he's a case that is not clearly defined by disabilities or mental health. I don't believe, based on public record, that he was diagnosed before 18. I know the substance use plays into that. But the state really doesn't have anything to do with him or any place to put him, because that part of the care cycle is missing. And you might all be thinking that that really is outside of your scope because you deal with disabilities. But when we talk about legislative history with S89, and you guys can look all these up. If you need me to send them to you, I will. S89 did a forensic facility in 23. S91 had competency restoration in 23. Both of them made it through the Senate. In the House, only S89 made it through. And at the last minute, this committee pulled that back for people with disabilities. They wanted to study it for a year. And when that happened, and it went back in 2024, the entire forensic facility piece was pulled out. And it still left a big gap. And I'm begging you now, do not do that. I know that people do not want DOC in charge of this, but I don't know if we have any other choice. I mean, if you look at what we tried to do in 23, we were going to put a wing over, take some of the beds out of the Berlin Psych Hospital. And then we found out we couldn't do it because we would lose all the Medicaid funding. And then we looked at River Valley and the same thing. And we can't afford to do that, to lose the Medicaid funding. I've heard Commissioner Murad testify that he thinks that DOC can handle the workload or the additional caseload. Right now, they're handling them sort of. They're there, but they're not doing any justice because the state doesn't have that statute to put them in place for any of them. And I've often said to put a forensic facility on the grounds of the corrections facility because they're violent crimes. I do, however, think if they're going to be at Southern State, and I expect it would be Southern State, I don't think that they should be in with the general population. I do think that they need to have their own location. And I think in a real world, a perfect world, we would have a campus. You know, House Corrections yesterday was talking about a report from 10, 12 years ago with an 800-bed facility. and 50-bed facility for forensics, because at that time, that's what the state wanted, but everybody said, oh no, we can't do something with that many beds. And I think since we've closed Waterbury, we've just done all of this piecemeal out in the community. And there's definitely benefits to community. In my work history, I have been involved with facilities that have been shutting down and transitioning to community group homes throughout the state of Connecticut. I value that community process, but I do think that there is a small amount of cases where there needs to be that perimeter that protects the public, and not only the public, but it protects the other patients and the staff. I've heard testimony in other committees from a disability rights advocate saying, just build safe rooms in all the houses for the staff. I think that's sad. I don't think that should be the answer. You know, it just is, we shouldn't lock everybody up. But I do think that we need to say, hey, you know what? We have an issue. What we've been trying to do before hasn't worked. And maybe we need to compromise, and maybe we need to say to AHS, hey, you know what? You all have to work together. And if DOC does have control of it, then hold them accountable. Put the oversights in there. Put the reports in. If it's going to be the agencies, have that collaboration between the agencies and somebody in corrections who's doing that oversight, so that you don't have those cases where people are just not complying with their treatment, because a lot of it is voluntary. So I know that that's, you know, the mental health part is not yours, but it also, it's you've heard, it's not clear cut. People overlap within that, and we need to take a look at what we've got, or mostly what we're lacking. And I know that S-193 isn't perfect, but it's a step forward. You know, give them the timeline to come back. Give them the timeline to make some rules, to say, hey, you know what, we don't want it to be strictly corrections. We want to know, we want more details, but at least do something, because really, you know, I've heard people testify. It's been kicked down. The can has been kicked down the road long enough. We need to do something. The problem is only getting bigger. And I really want to take a moment to thank you. I know this is a bill that comes up year after year. And I know that this is the first time that you've had a victim testify. And I really appreciate that. And I just want to make sure that you all know that we really think we should be at the table to talk about all of these issues. You know, I've heard time and time again that we're irrelevant, and we're not. We bring the consequences of the laws that are in place and the bills that are ignored. And I think that we've deserved to have a right at the table. And I think Emily Perry spoke in House Judiciary. Her father was found not guilty by reason of insanity for murdering her sister. That is that is like horrific. I cannot even imagine that. And the state has no place to put him. Once there was a plea agreement, the state washed their hands of him. It was the defense attorney who had to step up and find some place to put him. And that's just wrong on so many levels. That's missing. And next session, I think guilty by reason of insanity or guilty by mental defect or mental ill is something that needs to be considered. But I do thank you, because it has been said that we lack the knowledge and experience to understand the complexity of the liberty issues at stake. And I respectfully disagree with that. And I applaud you for letting victims be heard. And thank you. Thank you for taking this bill up and for what you do to support. And I'll take any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you so much. And I guess I would want to say that I'm sorry if you have experienced, you know, some place in this building that said victims' voices were not relevant. That is sort of the furthest thing from how we operate here in this committee. And so I apologize on behalf of the General Assembly. That kind of statement really, I feel like that's a disservice to the Vermont public and to people who have experienced violence in their circles of families and friends. And so I'm sorry that you had that experience.
Well, thank- And I really hope S-193 goes forward because that gives us the ability to have a say, just a statement, not even a say in the outcome, but it gives us the ability to make a statement, which is huge. Right now, we can write a written statement without any guarantee the judge will read it, and it's never included in the record. And sometimes, just like today, just that being heard means a lot to a lot of victims. And I'll tell you, Leanne Billings is another victim who's been testifying. She's testified in House Judiciary. Her son was one of the victims in that double homicide in Burlington, where the offender was recently, this week, sentenced to 45 years. And he just kept delaying with not competency evaluations. She has a very lengthy history working with people with mental health and disabilities. And she had a really good suggestion that if we need to have collaboration, if it's not within DOC and it does go to one of the agencies, that perhaps that agency should be responsible for sending a monthly update to DOC, just so that there's somebody that says, hey, they are complying. Yes, they are going to their required treatment meetings and medication if that's required, or not participating in drugs if that's required. And so she's very knowledgeable, and I would very strongly recommend encourage you to talk to either Emily Perry or Leanne Billings Gleason on that, because they bring an interesting perspective.
Thank you. One of the things that I, in terms of the gaps, that you identified, I think that it is fairly clear, to us that there is a gap. It's how do we best achieve community safety and still balance the constitutionality of issues. And I think that maybe the third or fourth time, I agree, I'm not sure if it's the third or the fourth time, will be the time that we're able to sort of strike a balance where people can feel comfortable with both in this situation. So I feel like there's, as you already know, because you're following all this, there's testimony in 4 different committees happening at the same time on this issue. And we are all taking it really seriously and all trying to make sure that we achieve the things that were lacking in your family's case and in other families' cases. It's not an easy thing to do what you've been doing, and we really do acknowledge and appreciate that, because it is something that I know that is cannot bring your daughter back at all, but it can save somebody else's family member. And so I know I speak on behalf of the rest of the committee that appreciates your stick-to-itiveness and your ability to keep coming back after us to do something about it. So thank you.
And I do want to add one other comment, and I apologize. I know it's the end of the day. But some of the testimony that came out in judiciary was to encourage the use of Bennington's eye care mission care for placement. And, right now there is no option. So like in our case, before anything even happens with S-193 or whatever we decide to do, and really, I think we need a whole system of care, because we need to get that prevention in at the beginning so that we don't have the results that we have. But I would very strongly encourage not sending them to nursing homes. One thing I've done is I started Voices for Vermont Victims, which is just a grassroots advocacy thing. It's just pretty much me and then some other victims, and we write some letters and we talk. But I've heard from some other family members of residents at that place. And there was what I would call a forensic, and I know that's just a term that gets used loosely, but there was a patient that was able to re-victimize a mom. I got an email from a daughter, and I spoke with her. Her mother was abused as a child and has struggled with that her entire life, and she is a resident, and this person was able to get access to her and didn't physically touch her, but verbally, and re-traumatized her. And they did move him. They removed him from the facility. I don't know if he went back to jail or if he went to one of their other facilities, but I don't think that's the right place for that. And Emily Perry testified to that when the state, when her father was done with his agreement, they said, well, you can put him in a nursing home, you can put him in a hotel in Barrie, you can send him home, which they felt put him at a high risk for regression and stuff. So we know that in our case, he's coming into the community somewhere. I'm just begging you to make it to a place where there is a fence so he cannot hurt another resident, a staff member, or somebody else out in the community. So,
yeah, I don't think, Kelly, that you will see that, you're not gonna see this committee recommending placement of people who have been dangerous to be put in a nursing facility. That's not gonna happen.
I don't even know how Dale got that contract through without, I just don't know. There was so much, there was a community hearing in Bennington at the time. It's just not the right environment for, residents, older residents that, anyway, that's a whole other topic.
That's true. And we've talked a lot about that topic here. So thank you so much for being here today, and really appreciate it.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
All righty. Bye-bye. Okay, folks. So that will wrap up today. Tomorrow, it's Friday already. Can you believe it?
No.
Tomorrow, we're going to be hearing from some folks at Randolph Union High School on housing and homelessness, and some students. So it is always great to hear from students. And so we look forward to doing that. That will be after floor, and then we'll have lunch. And then we are going to be spending some time with Katie. We're going to have potential vote on S-243, which is the Language Justice Project. We're going to also try to move out that resolution that we talked about today on language access, communication access. And then we are going to spend some time doing some markup of, if we're able to get to this bill that we just been talking to, which I hope that we are, because we kind of are under a deadline. So the only additional piece of testimony we're going to have on 193 is from Judge Zone, and that is next Wednesday. So we haven't got the court's perspective on this, so we want to do that. But I think that we can simultaneously work on this. So, and Lori, would you post for tomorrow the latest version you can find on the judiciary website of S-193? I know there was a 3.1, there might be a 4.1 by now, I'm not sure. So that'll be the version that we're looking to work through. I also have what did I do with it? I have language that corrections and institutions, that's probably on their website, Lori, too. Can you work with that committee assistant to find it? They have some draft language they've been working with Katie on, so that we can take a look at that. And if we get that done by, let's just say Wednesday of next week, the rest of the time next week, that leaves us with S-198. Which is the tobacco bill. That has to go to Ways and Means. So I would like, I've done another read through this. I've made some comments. Most of, not all, but most of the rest of the stuff is not stuff that is in our jurisdiction. So I think that if, whenever we're going to be able to get Jen here, I think we can get through the next version of this and then move that on to Ways and Means. Because they, there's a lot of fee stuff in here, so they'll need to take a look at that. And then we'll be concentrating on the bills that come back, because we will have moved everything out of that we have, but we'll be concentrating on the bills that come back from the Senate, 660, 657. Will probably be on the calendar it'll be on notice there tomorrow, so they should vote on it on Tuesday, but they do lots of stuff like, they don't always get to all of the calendar, so they just continue the calendar. So just to keep an eye out for those things. And they're still working on 938. And they did pass out a couple of our bills. I don't know if they made any, I haven't looked at the language. They've already been voted on in the Senate. So they'll be coming back to us. So
46 just got voted out.
today on the Senate, yeah.
Oh, what one was that?
That was the rare
Rare
disease,
disease.
last year's Rare Disease Advisory Council.
Oh, I remember that.
So that's, what we're going to do. And then Lori,